All right, Texas football fans are hyped, pumped up for the 2019 season, considering how close they were to a Big 12 championship. And then, of course, a dominant, despite only 7-point win, but a dominant showing against a top 5 Georgia team in the Sugar Bowl. And they might kind of put on the brakes, or maybe I'm going to make them mad. We're going to make them mad when we explain some of the early point spreads that have come out according to Vegas in regards to Texas football and some of its biggest games this year. We got Steve Helwick on the line. You can join him at the Daily Texan, also the University of Texas campus cable station right there. Steve, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing excellent. It's March Madness time for college basketball. Also, spring football is coming back in, so it's an exciting time of the year as always.
Or if you're at Texas, it's NIT time, correct?
That is correct. They did win their NIT game in front of an empty arena last night. I'm sure more people will show up at the spring game by about 20 times as much.
Okay. And not that I was tracking that game in particular, but based on where I work, I saw that it was 19-0 Texas. And they blew this huge lead, and then they score late and salvage the win over. I don't even remember who they were playing.
South Dakota State, but yes,
Okay.
they did get the win.
I knew it was somebody that they would be expected by, the general population to beat. All right, let's look at who the big games are on the football schedule in 2019, and a lot of debate can be had when you look at betting lines, especially 9 months in advance. But it's fun to talk about and look at. And we reviewed them, at least the 3 that have been reported, 3 of Texas's biggest games for this fall, and they're just I can't believe these. I know exactly in which direction I would go, and maybe that makes a fool out of all of us when we think we've got Vegas beat. But LSU at Texas, of course, that I believe is the second game of the season, which I am coming out a little bit later, Steve, with my top 10 non-conference games of 2019. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but that is extremely, extremely high on the list. LSU at Texas, I can't wait for this game. LSU is a 7-point favorite in Austin.
I can't believe it. 7-point favorite in Austin seems like a lot, but you have to look at LSU, and a lot of the SEC teams do well in those non-conference games early. I know a lot of people will scream at SEC bias. I'm the biggest fan of the conference, but you have to them. They do well in those early non-conference games. You look last year, Auburn goes in, they beat Washington in a neutral site game in Atlanta, and then Washington ends up in a New Year's Six Bowl while Auburn goes 7-5 and goes to the Music City Bowl. So the SEC does really well in these non-conference games against premier opponents, and LSU has a good track record against it too. Last year, a lot of people expected the Miami Hurricanes. Everyone was saying the U is back, and they thought they were going to beat LSU. LSU just smashed them in Cowboy Stadium in Dallas, and LSU beat Oregon earlier this decade in a neutral non-conference game. LSU's done really well, but this time they'll have to go to Austin, and I'll have to say the atmosphere in Austin has really kicked it up and made it tougher for road teams in recent years. West Virginia was one of the few teams able to survive DKR last year, but it's going to be difficult for LSU to win that game. But they're a very solid team. I know Texas has a lot of hype because they finished last year beating Georgia in a massive upset, finished the season in the top 10 for the first time in a long time. And they have Sam Ehlinger returning, and Tom Herman's finally getting his recruits in and his recruits starting. And they had another great class this year, getting guys like Brew McCoy, Jordan Whittington, some 5 stars here, 5 stars there. So Texas has a lot of hype. But you have to remember, LSU is a great team too. LSU still has a lot of good returning players from last year's team. They are losing some good players to the draft like Greedy Williams and guys on their defense. But LSU is still one of the premier programs in college football. They ended last year by defeating UCF, who had a 25-game win streak, a team that nobody was able to beat. I know they didn't have McKenzie Milton, but LSU was able to do it. They had a great offense in that game, which is something that LSU's had a lot of question marks with in the past, and they managed to put up 40 points in an all-around impressive showing that day. And LSU's entering next year probably in the top 10 as well. So it's going to be a good game. I just don't think 7 points I think would be a fair spread in Death Valley. I'd probably put the spread around 8.5 or something. But in DKR, maybe LSU by a field goal to 4. I think seven's a big spread for a game that's in Texas.
And so this is the way I look at it. Obviously, LSU could win this game by more than a touchdown. If we're just looking at one isolated football game, and that's all it's going to be, they're only going to play once. But this is based on probabilities. And the probabilities that if these two teams could march on the football field 100 times in Austin, that LSU would win these games by an average of 7 points every time out, I think is ludicrous. I don't even think this point spread is close. Now, of course, once they get on the field, it could be a great game. LSU could have a 3-point lead with 3 minutes left in the game, then score a touchdown that's somewhat meaningless and win 34-24. They win by 10 points, they cover the spread. Technically, they covered the spread, and that's all that matters. But a 7-point spread in a football game means that team is decidedly, I'm not going to say substantially, decidedly, that it's been determined by Vegas that they are decidedly better, like a 70 to 75% chance that they're going to win. And I just don't see that much separation between these two teams. And again, they will play here in one of the anticipated matchups of 2019, LSU at Texas, with the Longhorns early on here as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to run down some scores from the Red River rivalry just to outline something. And we know that Oklahoma has dominated the Big 12 for quite some time, and Texas has been down since 2009 until a resurgence, of course, last year. So Texas won the game head-to-head, of course, the regular season game 48-45 last year before Oklahoma enacted revenge 39-27 in the Big 12 championship game. In 2017, Oklahoma was decidedly the better team, but only won by 5 points, 29-24 in Dallas. In 2016, this was a 45-40 game, despite, again, Texas only being 5-7, Oklahoma being a Big 12 championship team. In 2015, we had a game between Oklahoma and Texas of 24-17, even though, and this was a win by Texas over a team in Oklahoma that went to the college football playoff. Actually, that was in 2014. In 2015, yes, again, Oklahoma was the champion of the Big 12. In 2014, we had a 31-26 game. This is even going better than I expected to try to prove my point here. 31-26 Oklahoma over Texas. Again, a Texas team that went 6-7 still played within a score of Oklahoma. And if we go to 2013, it's a 36-20 game that Texas won over Oklahoma. Again, as an 8-5 team upsetting a better team in Oklahoma, 36-20. We go back to 2012, and we've got a final score of, okay, this finally breaks the trend. 2012, 63-21 Oklahoma. So 2013 through 18, that's 6 consecutive years of a one-score game or a Texas win by 16. But this year, a season in which Texas is going to field most likely its best team since 2009, they are an off-season 17-point favorite or underdog, 17-point underdog against Oklahoma, Steve.
I cannot explain that. I'm not responsible for any viewers' money loss, but I'm just saying I'd go to Vegas right now and do
absolutely.
They say there's a reason there's tall buildings in Vegas, but I just can't wrap my head around that one. This is an Oklahoma team that I don't think many people are expecting Oklahoma to be better than last year's team. I mean, one of these times there has to be a Lincoln Riley quarterback that doesn't win the Heisman Trophy. Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray were guys that could win games just by it was like Lamar Jackson at Louisville. Look at Louisville once they lost Lamar Jackson. Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray were those quarterbacks that could just win games. Their presence was enough to win games. Oklahoma's defense last year, it was poor. It was really bad defense. They were one of the worst secondaries in the country. And Oklahoma didn't win games because of that unit. They won games because of great quarterbacks. Now they get a quarterback he's won national championships before. But Jalen Hurts, I don't see him as a guy who can really control a game as a quarterback. He's a solid runner. I'm sure he's a great leader, too, with all the experience he's had at Alabama. He also had great offensive lines, great defenses to help him at Alabama, which gives him just a nearly immaculate record as a starter. But I don't know if he's a quarterback that can take over Oklahoma, win a Heisman Trophy, and do it with his arm and his legs like Mayfield and Murray did. But we know that Lincoln Riley is excellent in developing quarterbacks, and I'm sure he could do that again. 17 points. I'm still astounded just by that point spread because Texas is returning. I know they're replacing about 8 defensive starters, but they're also returning a lot of key pieces on offense, and they got another solid, stellar recruiting class in. They have guys like Sam Ehlinger on offense and Caden Stearns to lead the defense. Caden Stearns will probably end up as an All-American this year. And just you've given the history of the rivalry. And the teams that Texas beat, they beat this year's Oklahoma playoff team in October 6th. They beat the 2015 Oklahoma playoff team back in October that year. And in 2013, that was the Oklahoma team that went on to beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl with Trevor Knight, and Texas beat them by 16. So it's been a long time since Oklahoma's actually won a game by 17 in the series. And this does not seem like the year. This was a year where I actually felt like Texas may have surpassed Oklahoma in the offseason as the best Big 12 team. Oklahoma runs that conference, but it looks like the tide might be turning just because of the Sugar Bowl, what we saw from Texas, and the fact that Texas returns a quarterback. They have a coach who seems to bring this program on the rise, and we don't know how Oklahoma will operate without a Heisman caliber quarterback.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Here's the deal, folks. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. We deliver each and every day the best discussion, debate, and analysis on college football every day. We're in the midst of March with little coming out of spring football at this point, and we're still talking college football each and every day. This is your place to be. Share the videos, subscribe, like, and comment. Of course, we want to hear from you. That builds the channel. We got Steve Helwick on the line from the Daily Texan. Also, it does work there at the University of Texas campus cable station. Texas Tech. Now, I would think if this game was in Lubbock and this going to be played the final Friday of the regular season with possibly a Big 12 championship game on the line for the Longhorns, if they had to travel to Lubbock as a 3-point favorite, absolutely. This is telling me with the game being played in Austin and Vegas right now, the odds are obviously going to change decidedly in some manner between now and then because Texas could be riding a who knows, a 10-1 record at the time, and Texas Tech could be 5-6, or maybe Texas Tech will overachieve and Texas will underachieve. Who knows? But as it stands right now, Texas in Austin, a 3-point favorite against Texas Tech. This is telling me that if it was a neutral site game, Steve, it would be even, and the Red Raiders would be a favorite in Lubbock. I'm not getting this one either.
That one kind of surprises me, but Texas Tech has a good recent track record in Austin. They won that game where they were trailing in the fourth quarter, had such a low win probability. It was Thanksgiving. It was either Thanksgiving or Black Friday night. Just in the 2017 season when Sam Ehlinger threw those interceptions at the end of the game. Texas Tech returned them, and they managed to complete a great comeback, score touchdowns, and then they won the 2015 game. That was the one where they had Jakeem Grant, a current Miami Dolphin, have an end around to seal the win over the Longhorns then. So Texas Tech's been a good rival. Honestly, the Texas Tech series is just like the Oklahoma series. Texas plays them close every single year. Last year, it was just a reverse of the Michael Crabtree play with Lil Jordan Humphrey in the corner in Lubbock. And the year before, it came down to a goal line interception by the Red Raiders that they threw in their own end zone in Lubbock. That was in the 2016 season. So Texas and Texas Tech always play close too. So I think the 3-point spread might be indicative of some of the previous results. Texas Tech, it's a question mark. They don't have Cliff Kingsbury, who many people have considered an offensive genius anymore, despite having poor records at Texas Tech. He actually landed an NFL job. He's in a better place now. So they have Matt Wells at Utah State. Utah State had one of the better defenses last year. They had a great offense too, led by Jordan Love. And now Matt Wells is bringing a system from the Aggies to the Red Raiders. So there's a lot of uncertainty with Texas Tech this year, but we do know that they have a great depth chart of quarterbacks coming up with Alan Bowman, Jet Duffy, McLean Carter, all quarterbacks I saw playing action last year and were more than capable. And they have a lot of good players on offense. TJ Vasher, he's a receiver, made a lot of great acrobatic catches last year. So Texas Tech just once again is going to have a great offense. The question is, can their defense step up and play at a high level? So 3 points right now, obviously you want to take Texas, especially being at home, being at DKR, a place where their home field advantage seems to be more in effect recently. But I'm surprised that's just a 3-point spread. I think there'd be other Big 12 opponents that you'd expect Texas to have closer spreads with, such as Oklahoma State or Iowa State or some of those other teams that usually contend for the Alamo Bowl or the Camping World Bowl or some of those second and third best bowls in the Big 12.
Steve, I will never understand the Cliff Kingsbury cachet. I think of Lubbock as being a difficult place to win versus the rest of the Big 12, considering the powers at Texas and Oklahoma, and to a lesser degree, TCU, Oklahoma State, and other places like Kansas State under Bill Snyder. But at the same time, Mike Leach showed us, and I did analysis recently on this and ranking the Big 12 coaches, that Mike Leach won 65% of his games in Lubbock. He finished ranked in the top 25. Texas Tech, who I never think of finishing in the top 25, he had them finishing in the top 25 5 of his last 6 seasons there. Kingsbury only wins 30% of his games, 30 to 35% of his games in conference, and racks up a ton of 5 and 7 seasons. I don't get it, but good for him. He signed an NFL contract, and he's probably the coach of the worst team in the NFL right now, but we'll see what he has with the #1 pick in the NFL draft. Before we let you go, Steve, want to hit you up on the Big 12 because this, similar to the Alabama-Georgia equation in the SEC, seems like a done deal. These are the 2 best teams. It's going to be Oklahoma, Texas in the Big 12 championship, and it just is a matter of, are those teams going to be in position to get to a college football playoff? And we're just kind of biding time in September, October, and November. But we know things typically fool us in college football at times. West Virginia under Will Grier was supposed to be that wild card team last year. Mason Rudolph and Oklahoma State the year before were kind of the chic pick that didn't pull through. Iowa State has established itself as a team to be reckoned with, not to the talent scale, but very difficult to play. And of course, Gary Patterson and TCU always a factor as well. Oklahoma State last year turned in one of the oddest seasons of the 2018 campaign. They beat the good teams, the really good teams, are played within a point, and they lost to the bad teams and got bludgeoned by really bad teams like Kansas State and also Baylor. Your thoughts about if somebody's going to jump up and surprise one of the slots in the Big 12 championship game, who would that team be?
A lot of times, Gary Patterson has bounce back years at TCU. I mean, he had just a couple years ago a 4-8 season in, I think, 2013. The next year, he should have been in the college football playoff in 2014. TCU was a top 3 team in the country that year, and they only had 1 loss. So Gary Patterson knows how to bounce back. He also had that 6-7 season in 2016. And what's he do in 2017? He goes back, he finishes as one of the top teams in the nation and gets a Alamo Bowl win over Stanford. Comes off of a bowl win. I mean, it could have been the greatest bowl game or the ugliest bowl game, depending on how you like your college football and that Cheez-It Bowl. But the thing about TCU is I don't think they have the quarterback yet because Sean Robinson decided to transfer to Missouri. And I thought TCU had that quarterback, and I thought they were going to sustain long-term success. But I don't know what they're going to do with the depth chart next year. I'm guessing they go with Justin Rogers as their starter. But I'm going to go with Iowa State. Iowa State will be that dark horse team that shows up next year. Matt Campbell has done a terrific job in Ames, just a program that's been difficult to win at. It should have had that Alamo Bowl win probably last year, lost 28-26 to Washington State in a highly competitive matchup. He has found quarterbacks the past couple of years that have been able to thrive and win big Big 12 games. They had Kyle Kemp in the 2017 season. They had Brock Purdy in the 2018 season. Iowa State, one other thing that the Cyclones have been good at is finding great receivers. They had Hakeem Butler, he's just a big, strong receiver. He'll go to the NFL this year. They had Alan Lazard before that. And Iowa State is good at developing talent and squeezing every single last drop out of the players that they get. So I think the Cyclones could be that dark horse third place team this year in the Big 12 because I don't know what to make. Oklahoma State's lost so much senior talent the last few years. I mean, Mike Gundy's a good coach too. This conference is full of them, it seems like. And West Virginia loses Will Grier. They lose David Sills. Dana Holgerson too departs to Houston. I think this is a year the Mountaineers probably slide out of bowl eligibility. So I think everything props up Iowa State to be that third team in the conference. I think TCU might compete with them too because the Horned Frogs usually have a great defense. So those would be Horned Frogs and Cyclones are the two teams I'd put right behind, but I think I'm going to give Iowa State as the third. And if they can get a key upset over Texas or Oklahoma, who knows if they could win a tiebreaker and end up in the Big 12 championship. I mean, West Virginia almost did this last year by beating Texas. Just if they won another game, if they beat Oklahoma State and Stillwater and didn't allow the Cowboys to come back in that game, it would have been the Mountaineers representing instead of Texas.
Good points by Steve Helwick. You can join him at the Daily Texan. Also does fine work at the University of Texas campus cable TV station. Also, his college football writing bleeds into the MAC conference at the Hustle Belt on SB Nation. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully, we'll have you back soon. Maybe we'll get some word out of camp and some storylines on Texas football.
Thanks, Mark. Really enjoy being on here.